Tensions between Russia and NATO have risen sharply in recent days, with a series of incidents pointing to a dangerous shift from rhetoric to direct action. What had long been warnings and heated political exchanges are now unfolding in the form of military provocations, sparking fears among security experts that Europe may be edging closer to a global conflict. The most alarming development came when 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets violated Estonian airspace near Vaindloo Island in the Gulf of Finland. According to Estonian officials, the aircraft had no flight plan, turned off their transponders, and ignored air traffic control instructions. NATO scrambled Italian F-35 jets to intercept the Russian planes, while Estonia invoked Article 4 of the Washington Treaty, which allows members to call urgent consultations when their sovereignty is threatened. This was not an isolated event. Over recent weeks, Poland, Romania, and other NATO members have reported repeated drone incursions and gray zone activities, operations that fall short of outright war but still erode sovereignty and test defenses. Russia, meanwhile, has intensified its joint military drills with Belarus, including high-profile Zapad exercises that showcased hypersonic Zircon cruise missiles, Su-34 bombers, and long-range anti-submarine aircraft. While Moscow insists these operations are defensive in nature, Western leaders see them as part of a deliberate strategy to project strength, intimidate neighboring states, and probe NATO's readiness. For NATO, the concern is not only the aggression itself, but the potential for miscalculation. When military jets enter sovereign airspace with their identification systems turned off, or when drones cross borders without warning, the risk of misunderstanding skyrockets. A single mistaken response, such as the downing of a plane or drone, could set off a chain reaction leading to a broader confrontation. Analysts warn that these provocations are designed to test NATO's unity and willingness to respond under pressure. If the alliance is perceived as weak or divided, Russia could be emboldened to push further, raising the stakes across the eastern flank. Moscow, for its part, denies intentionally breaching NATO territory. Russian officials argue that their aircraft operated over neutral waters or were engaged in routine patrols. Yet the Estonian government and NATO commanders reject those claims, pointing to radar evidence and the deliberate deactivation of transponders as proof of a brazen violation. The dispute highlights a broader ambiguity. While Russia avoids direct attacks that would trigger NATO's collective defense clause under Article 5, it engages in repeated gray zone tactics, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, drone flights, and airspace incursions that undermine trust and stability without crossing the clear threshold of war. The international response has been swift. Estonia's decision to invoke Article 4 has prompted emergency consultations among NATO allies, while the European Union has joined in condemning Moscow's actions. Poland and the Baltic states are calling for stronger measures, including expanded air defense systems, increased troop deployments, and tougher sanctions. The United States has also weighed in. President Donald Trump publicly warned Russia that any escalation against Poland or the Baltic nations would trigger a firm American response. His statement reaffirmed Washington's commitment to NATO's defense, but also underscored just how volatile the situation has become. At the same time, NATO forces are adjusting their posture. The Eastern Sentry operation, launched in response to drone incursions into Poland earlier this month, has expanded aerial surveillance, tightened ground defenses, and increased joint exercises. Fighter jets from multiple countries are now on heightened alert across the Baltic and Black Sea regions. These measures are meant not only to reassure allies, but also to deter further Russian provocations. Still, many analysts caution that deterrence is a delicate balance. Too little response could embolden Moscow, while too strong a move risks accelerating the march toward confrontation. For ordinary citizens in Eastern Europe, the rising tensions are already being felt. Populations in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland are growing increasingly anxious, with governments issuing warnings about possible disruptions to civilian air traffic and the need to remain alert. Memories of past Soviet domination make the threat especially personal in the region. At the same time, economic concerns are mounting. Defense budgets are swelling, energy markets remain volatile, and the possibility of new sanctions and counter-sanctions looms large. The specter of escalation carries both human and financial costs that extend far beyond Europe's borders. Experts outline several possible scenarios in the weeks ahead. The most dangerous, but least likely, would be an open military confrontation, triggered either by an intentional Russian attack or a fatal miscalculation. More plausible are limited provocations, such as drone incursions, cyber attacks, or small-scale border incidents designed to test NATO's response. There is also the risk of an accidental clash, an aircraft shot down in disputed airspace, for example, that could spiral out of control. In every case, the unifying concern is the same: a creeping normalization of provocations that erode NATO's deterrence and bring the world closer to the brink of war. Ultimately, the crisis underscores a fundamental question about the global security order. If NATO cannot effectively deter and respond to violations of its members' sovereignty, then the credibility of the alliance itself may come into doubt. That perception could embolden not only Russia, but also other powers considering challenges to international borders. For now, the alliance's strength lies in its unity. But as Russia pushes the boundaries with increasingly aggressive maneuvers, NATO will need to demonstrate both resolve and restraint. Striking that balance may be the only way to prevent this dangerous game of brinkmanship from igniting into a conflict that no side can truly control.